I think for me, it's a role that tends to be pretty all-encompassing. One of the things that I feel pretty strongly about is data scientists should be kind of quote-unquote full stack. Also, one of the reasons that drew me to this field is like logistics and freight data. There's just so much interesting data out there. You haven't actually created that value until it's like actually like the last dot is signed and it's out there. So kind of the execution, I think, is another like pretty important quality. I think like one of the things that makes data science difficult is it can be a bit of like an ambiguous field, sort of like what is actually the deliverable.
Hi all, good morning. So today I have Leo with us who likes to build bridges between human and machine expertise to make better decisions with data. He's always on the lookout for curious data scientists who are ready to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. Leo has learned a lot along his way, especially when it comes to data science, which is why he is considered an expert when it comes to his field. Let's welcome Leo on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about how it's like been bridging the gap between data science and machine learning and coming up with innovative solutions. Hi, Leo. How are you doing today?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. So, Leo, can you tell us about what is data science according to you?
Yeah, data science can mean so many things at so many different companies. I think you can see that by just reading all the different job descriptions. I think for me, it's a role that tends to be pretty all-encompassing. One of the things that I feel pretty strongly about is data scientists should be kind of quote-unquote full stack, in that it is a profession that solves kind of ambiguous and not fully formed problems, but sort of in the best way possible and using data. So all the way from kind of getting customer feedback, working with designers and product managers to actually getting some of the data sets and prototyping models, and all the way through to rolling up sleeves and doing a little bit of production coding.
Okay, no, definitely that makes sense. I think a follow-up question for that would be is there's not a standardized route to take when you want to become a data scientist, but according to you, what are some of the steps an individual can take to move up the ladder, especially when it comes to a career in data scientist?
I've seen people go into data science from, I think, like a lot of different fields and professions. Yeah, what are good ways to move up the ladder? I do actually think that it is a field that can benefit from having some software engineering and technical skills. So I think that's something that I always encourage getting more experience with. Um, at the same time, I think kind of like data science boot camps that are also like great. Definitely set people kind of like up for success in sort of learning the ropes. But then also just like natural curiosity, jump into new problems, learn kind of new areas, gain an expertise in a particular field or type of data. I think is always pretty helpful.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the key characteristics, which is to always stay curious. What are some other characteristics that makes the individual a good data scientist, according to you?
I think curiosity is a big one. I think another one is always keeping in mind sort of the value that's being created. I think like one of the things that makes data science difficult is it can be a bit of like an ambiguous field, sort of like what is actually the deliverable, and kind of keeping like a big focus on, hey, what is this thing that I'm putting out there? It can be a report, it can be like a tool, it can be a product, and like that is the thing that's creating value. And it's almost like until you finally execute on that thing, you almost like no matter how much work you put in, you haven't actually created that value until it's like actually like the last dot is signed and it's out there. So kind of the execution, I think, is another like pretty important quality.
Okay, so what sort of projects, Leo, have you worked on at your current company, and what are some of the exciting projects that might be coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think also one of the reasons that drew me to this field is like logistics and freight data. There's just so much interesting data out there. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a pulse on the economy. Something like 70 or 80% of all goods bought and sold in the U.S. have been on a truck at some point, right? So it's really a fascinating view into kind of like how um, a lot of the consumer economy works in the U.S. And some of the all right. So what are some of the interesting problems we've worked on? I think one of the really interesting ones is figuring out sort of the matching in between, on the one hand, trucking fleets that deliver these goods, and on the other hand, the shippers and goods that need to be delivered. Because there's like a lot of ways that you could do that, but at the end of the day, if you have a trucking fleet that's, say, making a delivery from, I don't know, San Francisco to Dallas, and they make that delivery, but then they have to drive home empty. That doesn't really help anyone, because it's not great for the fleet. They're wasting a bunch of time and gas and fuel and things. It's not great for kind of like the overall like market, right? Like there is another shipment that could be getting delivered during that time. And it's actually also not great kind of like for environmental reasons. Sort of like the more inefficiency in the system, the more gas is being burned needlessly, right? So I think that's actually probably been one of the most like fascinating and interesting problems that we have been working on, is like how to create like efficient routes and schedules. And also, I think like that's probably the most interesting thing that we're going to continue to work on.
No, that definitely sounds amazing. And I think, especially because you mentioned the statistic that 80% of goods are usually delivered over truck. I did not know that, especially when I think of the data. There must be so much data that one could explore, produce regression analysis just to understand the trends. So that definitely does sound very exciting. So thank you so much for sharing that, Leo. Last question, Leo. Would love to understand what are some, if you're hiring within your team, what are some of the roles that are open, and what kind of people are more likely to succeed within your current company?
Yeah. So currently on the data team, we're a fairly small company. So the data team is just one team that does sort of everything from kind of like data science and machine learning to data engineering to analytics. We currently have a role open for data scientists, and I think the main factors that I think would contribute to success are the ones we already talked about: kind of curiosity, execution, and sort of like technical proficiency, sort of the ability to be independent, right, and to kind of like take these projects end to end. But over the coming months and into the next year, I think as the company is growing quite quickly, we'll have roles across all three of those areas.
Okay, and that wraps up our conversation, Leo. Thank you so much for coming on the show, for showing us what it takes to be a good data scientist, how one can move up the ladder, and what are some of the skills and characteristics that would essentially make a data scientist stand out compared to other candidates. It was a pleasure learning from you and your experiences.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.